Atlantean Secrets Sleeper Awaken by Samuel Sagan. Copyright Claire Vision. 1.2 75,000 years later. Atlantis, the Temple of Eisraim. When Jervin first came back to his senses, Marka was standing by his side. Praise the great Apollo, Jervin of Thunder, ambassador of our Lord Melchizedek, she whispered in his ear. A thunderous presence filled the room. Loud, hissing sounds like furious snakes took the serenity of the night. They shattered the soft cocoon of shimmering starlight, which patient Marka had woven around the sleeping body. From far away, a mysterious foreign voice whispered, "Space Matrix time reconnection completed." It was but an elusive breath, an improbable thread of meaning in a cosmos riddled with nebulous enigmas, but pregnant with ancient forces of incomprehensible magnitude. When she heard it, Marka shivered. And in a nearby chapel, the principal space controller of Eisraim also heard the wondrous murmur. He was amazed, and he knew. Led by Space Matrix, Jervin of the Brown Robe had returned from the remote spheres of the flying dragons. He was now re-entering his body, which had been hibernating for 32 weeks under the expert supervision and tender care of Marka, the young priestess of Melchizedek. Completely disregarding the lawful necessity for slow transitions, cautious reconnections, and gradual awakenings, Jervin smiled. Marka was not in the least surprised. She had learned the art of traveling from Jervin. She knew what the man was capable of. Despite being less than 30 years of age, Jervin, disciple of Orest, had conquered all the powers of the Masters of Thunder. Slowly she chanted an ancient ritual lullaby, which invoked her angel of highness. O great Melchizedek, wings of infinity, silent fullness which moves the world, protect this newborn child. Using her voice as a thread, Jervin pulled himself back into his body all at once and opened his eyes. Marka was a short, dark-haired woman from the countries of the south. She was not beautiful, but what made her special amongst all the priestesses of Eisraim were her eyes. Looking into Marka's eyes was like catching a glimpse of a primordial glory that had long disappeared from the kingdom. An enchanting, irrational feast of light to celebrate the extravaganza that ran through the world shortly after it had been delivered. Young Jervin, who wore the long brown gown of the Masters of Thunder, looked into the eyes of the priestess clad in the orange dress of the Order of Melchizedek. Light met light, and there was fullness. Welcome, friend. You are shining with the wonders of remoteness. Marka's smile was glowing. What extraordinary things you must have seen. Jervin kept smiling, silently rediscovering the magic of her eyes after his lengthy odyssey. To him, the journey had lasted not 7 months, but 7 aeons. For in the spheres of remoteness, time can be stretched, curved back, then concentrated all in one point, made to explode in lines that run in every direction and again can be stretched and curved into an infinity of temporal paradoxes. Jervin did not use his physical voice. After hibernating for so long, The rule was that no body part be moved for at least 3 and preferably 7 days. He spoke to Marca's consciousness through a voice channel of space. Marca, wise woman in the law, what a joy it is to see you again. I have waited for this moment with such impatience, my friend in the law. Marca used her normal voice. My body is teeming with wonderful energies, much clearer than when I left. What a feat you have accomplished, Marca. I have none of the dull inertia that usually afflicts travelers when they re-enter their body. How can I thank you for your tender care? Do not thank me, Jervin. Thank Melchizedek, the great angel. It is his light that I have projected into your body. Tell me, friend, how does it feel to be in a human body after being spread an infinity of space for so long? Like being squeezed into a tiny dot? The consciousness of the flying dragons is incommensurable, Marca, far beyond anything the human mind can conceive. The visions you sent were staggering. So you received them, the Voyager rejoiced. Every day, every night, every hour. The images were so beautiful they often made me cry with joy. I was especially moved by those you sent on your way back. The fault of eternity? Jervin asked, wondering how Marca's eyes were when she cried. And the abyss of the deep, where the mother of the light can be seen smiling? This was the most beautiful of all. Agreeing, Jervin brought the subject round. Marca, the flying dragons made me promise that the first thing I would do upon returning to the kingdoms would be to inquire about the Order of the White Eagle. Unfortunately, I had never heard of this order. Can you tell me anything about it? It's a female order, extremely ancient. Do we have any of them in our temple? I know there used to be a chapel of the White Eagle in the female wing of the temple, but it would have been at least 100 lawful years ago. I believe the Order of the White Eagle has more or less disappeared from the kingdom. Well, Marca, this is going to change. I have engaged the Word of Thunder. I will find the White Eagles and make a nest for them in Eisraim. Engage the Word of Thunder? Ha! Marca laughed with wonder. But this is extreme, Jervin. The flying dragons have declared themselves the allies of the Masters of Thunder. You have negotiated an alliance between the brown robe and the flying dragons? Marca marveled. The flying dragons have bestowed a shower of gifts on my order, Marca. They have given us full access to their universal knowledge banks, and they have given the Masters of Thunder permission to use Space Matrix, the phenomenal guidance system which they use when traveling through the spheres. But on one condition, that the brown robe will give its total and unconditional support to the White Eagles, and even share with them some of its most precious secrets. Had I not accepted immediately, the flying dragons would have thrown me out of their spheres. Marca was in awe. The glory of ancient worlds ablaze in her eyes. This is quite a story. Poetry in remoteness, it started aeons ago. And the flying dragons believe that one day the children of the White Eagle will fly to their spheres, and that an illumination of love will follow. They call it the flight of the eagles. How are you going to find these White Eagles? The flying dragons told me that Barkan Seer, the mighty master of thunder, knows one of the White Eagles and will direct her to me. Barkan Seer? But doesn't the legend say it has been more than 600 years since he last incarnated in the kingdom? He now lives in Highness. But this is not an obstacle for the flying dragons. They have already contacted him and arranged everything. Jervin, you know what the wise people of Eisraim say about your teacher Orest? That he's not one always easy to follow, but one never gets bored in his company? Well, this has become true of you, my friend. Life with you is always eventful. Jervin's eyes flared. Was this the right moment? Crossing the fault of eternity on his way back to the spheres of Melchizedek, he had promised himself that the first movement of his physical body would be to take Marka's hand, an Atlantean way of asking her to marry him. Jervin decided it was too early. He cared about Marka, the delicate soul, and he did not want to be abrupt with her in any way, not even the sweet abruptness of an untimely declaration of his love for her. Tell me, Marka, what has been happening in the kingdom since I left? Not only good news, Jervin. Still smiling, Jervin replied with one of the sayings of thunder. Let us start with the worst. Bobros, the giant who lives in the valley of the necromancer, has been terrorizing the people who live in the forests of Nadavan, and he's destroyed all the crop and the cattle in the north of the country, killing many peasants. Bobros, son of Bobros, the Nephilim giant, has caused all this havoc? But there's much worse. He has used the magic of the valley of the necromancer to manifest dark forces and spread them like a plague in the forests of Nadavan. Thousands of trees have died, Jervin. The elves and the fairies who escaped Bobros's black clouds have all fled from the country. If it continues like this, there will be nothing left of Nadavan. The entire area is becoming a desolate wasteland of dead wood and barren, rocky ground. And 2 months ago, a plague broke out in Eisraim city, killing hundreds of people. It has created panic in all the cities of the neighboring countries. It strikes people suddenly and causes violent fits of convulsions, and then it kills them after a few hours of shivering and terror. Has there been any outbreak of this pestilence in our temple? No, not yet. But in the northern part of the country around Eisraim city, it's spreading very fast. What does Orist of the Brown Robe say? 3 weeks ago, the Prince of Eisraim came to the temple in person for a meeting with Orist. The day after, Orist left for the forest of Nadavan, taking Ran, Jeraset, Esrevan, and Melchard with him. This sounds very serious. Have you heard from Orist since then? 5 days ago, he sent me a message saying he wanted you to join him as soon as possible. He's waiting for you with Esrevan and Ran Jeraset at the ford of Ariba in the northern part of Nadavan. As soon as possible, Jervin paused. Within reasonable limits, Jervin, Marka quickly added. She knew what irresistible fire drove Jervin when it came to serving his master. Reasonable limits and thunder had never gone together well. Jervin now knew for sure this was not the right time to take Marka's hand. And what about you, my good Marka? He inquired. What has been happening to you in the last months? Marka's eyes shone with the inspired light of her angel. Jervin, something wonderful has happened. I have applied for the high priesthood of my order and received a favorable response from the oracle. Are you going to become a high priestess of Melchizedek? Jervin's eyes opened wider. Yes, Jervin, she answered joyfully. The first of the 3 vows have already been spoken. This meant she would never be married. Jervin turned his head and bit his lip, thus breaking the promise he had made to himself with the fault of eternity as his witness. Sensing his immense disappointment, Marka exclaimed, Jervin, but do you mean? In a second she understood, and she was shattered. Marka was a person of great humility. She looked up to Jervin as a shining warrior of the spirit, destined for the highest functions of Eisraim. Despite his young age, he was already a famous healer, doctor of the law, and a teacher of several cult hearts. 3 times, the Prince of Eisraim had asked him to become one of his ministers. Each time Jervin had declined, preferring to serve his teacher Orist, the kingdom-famous Grand Master of Thunder, whose rare public appearances attracted crowds of pilgrims. Never had Marka suspected that a man like Jervin, Orist's heart disciple and close friend, could have wanted her. He was the most beautiful man she had ever met. She looked at the fine, curly blonde hair that had grown down to his shoulders while he was asleep, the noble beard she had trimmed a few days earlier, the high forehead of a man of the north, and the shining gray-green eyes which she had remembered every day for the last 32 weeks. Suddenly, his body was no longer that of a child under her care. The beautiful light in her eyes dimmed, and she cried. Devastated, Jervin didn't know what to say. Marka had been his friend and confidant for more than 4 years. She had not only been a constant support, but also a source of inspiration for him. And he had come to admire her so much that he had elected to give up his passion for celibacy, judging that her company would make him a better man. 100 times in the last year he had nearly taken her hand. But he wanted to be wise and avoid rushing like a young fool in the law and choose the best possible moment. Now that he had lost her, he found it difficult to believe that he could have been so stupid. Marka was shocked by the cruel reality. "Would you have wanted me, Jervin?" she asked in an uncertain voice. Jervin shrugged his shoulders. Her first vow had been spoken. It could not be withdrawn. But certain things in life are too important to remain unspoken. Marka needed to hear it from him. "Jervin, please answer me. Would you have wanted me?" Drawing from the high fountain of thunder, Jervin brought down an infinite softness into the room. "Marka, wise woman, let me tell you something that Orist taught me a few years ago, when he announced that he would initiate me as a Master of Thunder. He warned that during the 9 months which separated me from the initiation, many alluring offers would be made to me, and a number of circumstances would occur to try and pull me away from my destiny in the brown robe. Make no mistake, Orist said. These are temptations coming from the Prince of Darkness. 1 week later, I was approached by a representative of His Supreme Majesty the King of Atlantis, offering me a high office at the royal palace. This was only the beginning. At one stage, the Prince of Darkness even sent one of his emissaries, a Philion, to put a mind-boggling proposition to me. Jervin paused, remembering the dreadful episode that had nearly cost him his life. "Marka, perhaps this is happening to you at the moment. I would hate to be the one sent to you by the Prince of Darkness to take you away from Melchizedek. Jervin, I promise I will never mention this again if you do not want me to. But please, I need to hear this from you. Would you?" Marka hesitated. "Of course I want you. I love you, Marka. I can't imagine a better husband for you than Melchizedek. But if it hadn't been him, I would have been proud to take your hand."